God of the oppressed. And so the question was posed that who are the oppressed? And we came up with some groups of people that was oppressed, the women, the minority, our neighborhoods. And then we came up with some different ways that how they got oppressed. We're in Planting the Seed on page 39. We're on that page. And so today, in our final week, we're going to we talked a lot about who are oppressed, what they did to get oppressed, but now we want to talk about what we can do to help the oppressed. What are we doing? We don't want to just be talking about it all the time. We want to do something about it. Because our talk doesn't matter if we don't do something about it. So our roles as a Christians about the sensitive issue of being oppressed, we got to do something to address the problem that many of our brothers and sisters are facing. And so on this past week, I went to the school board meeting to see what they were talking about. I don't know how many of you have been to a school board meeting, but I encourage you. There's no more for this year, but next year, make sure that you attend the school board meetings. Very important. And not just the school board meetings, but they have a meeting for the Board of Public Utilities and a UG board meeting. Make sure you're attending all of those meetings so that you know what's going on, what they're doing. At the board meeting, many talked about the dollars being spent for our schools and what that looks like. So they're proposing a bond to help pay for the upgrades in our schools. Excuse me. And of course, the bond is a lot of money. But she broke it down where that on that monthly you would pay like $100 and something, however it goes, if everybody in the county. But the one thing that it took me back was that we have some schools that's over 100 years old in our school district. Over 100 years old. So those facilities, it's not up to date. They're not up to date in their facilities, and the teachers cannot teach properly. And so they also noted that the schools that are new, they got some new schools, that those schools and those students are performing at a much better rate than the students that attend schools that are over 100 years old. And the one thing that they pointed out was the light system. They're so dim, there's not even enough lights for the teachers to see, less alone the students. And so it makes a difference when they have adequate facilities to learn in. And so some people got up and said what they were going to say, but I was so taken back by a young man who stood up. He was a senior at J.C. Harmon. Very good. He was a senior at J.C. Harmon, and he talked a lot about his teachers who helped him through, that got him to where he's going. He's off to college, and he was just a bright young man, and he wanted everybody to vote yes on the bond. He said he's not going to get to enjoy the school and all the things that's going to happen, but for the next generation of people that's coming, it'll be so much better for them. Now, there was a lady before him that got up and said, vote no, because this is a lot of money. And, they made note more than one time that this is only for the school. This is not for the city. If you want to address city issues, you have to go to the city meeting. This is only for our schools. And so I was taken back by his passion that he had. Like, he's not going to get to enjoy that. But one of the things that they brought up is 50 years ago when Harmon was built, it was built without multiple gyms and a football field. Yeah, just like Schlago. Schlago was built without multiple gyms and a football field. Oh, thank you. And so why was that? Why did they build that? Did they run out of money? Did they allocate those monies somewhere else? But my thinking is the schools that got the gym and the swimming, they don't even have swimming pools for the swimming teams and stuff. So the only school that got that was Wyandotte and Washington. Now we know at that time Wyandotte and Washington looked way different. Their population was way different. And so I just think that that money got allocated for them to have the pools and everything because of what their population looked like. There was not enough people to stand up for the other schools. And so today, we're going to have to find some stand-up power. Stand-up power. Like, they're allotting all this money to these schools and the schools in your district. They even talked about Piper and how Piper allots so many thousands of dollars, I think 20 to 30,000 per student. What would that look like in our community if we had 20 or 30,000 per student to address their needs? Brother Kevin.
Now I would go to Shawnee Mission. They had everything. They had swimming, golf. But in Wyandotte County, we didn't have that. And I never understood why. Now they got baseball now. But when I was in school, they had nothing but football, basketball. But them Shawnee and Nucky schools, they had everything. Golf, everything. And we didn't have that.
And so they addressed that. Like, some of our students in our communities, they travel way to other communities in Olathe just to compete at that level because the facilities that we have in our community, they're subpar or they lack, period. They don't even have it. Miss Alice and then Brother David.
It's funny you were talking about this subject and that you went to the meeting. Me and my husband was just arguing about this because he said it's a lot more to it than voting yes. So just like you went to the meeting, some people say yes, some say no, and I was telling my husband, I'm like, we need new schools. I have a new job. I work for assisted transportation, those white vans y'all see up and down the street. And y'all, if y'all would see all the new schools in Overland Park and Shawnee Mission District and the parks that they got. We got the raggediest parks in Wyandotte County. Every few blocks I'm riding with the guy because I'm still in training. I'm looking at all these new schools and new parks. So me and my husband was actually arguing about this. He said, no, you don't know what you're talking about, Alice. It's more to it. I wish he was here to hear this. It's about them making money and the contractors making money, but he needs to hear more. We need these new schools.
We do. I would vote yes. I would like my dollars to be allocated to get new schools, to have a school that's over 100, and it's more than one school in Wyandotte County that's over 100 years old. And I'm sure there's other districts that are just like ours as they pulled up the data on that. But what she was saying that this bond money is only for the school. It's not going to be given to the city. It's not going to be given to the city administrators. It's only for the schools, the upkeep, the facilities to go. It's just like if you lived in a home that was subpar, you gotta invest in it. We want to invest in our future, and we got our future going to school in a building that's 100 and something plus years old. It's ridiculous. Brother David, did you have a?
Yeah, I wanted to add. I see like a bunch of like friends that I associated with, like even up north, and even some that I know in out in Shawnee Mission. Many of them they even donate. And they also go to all of the meetings. They got like Stuco meetings, and all the parents are actually involved in the school functions, not just the meetings that they're actually going. When during the school year, they go to the functions to see what's going on in the school and participate, and then they go so that they can have the information what they need to be voting on, and what they need to add to the school, and they're actually like.
Involved.
Yeah, they're resilient on making sure that stuff gets done. And I believe, because I don't go to the meetings in Wyandotte County at all, I believe that that's possibility of what could be lacking is parents. As far, I'll say this: when my boys went to Lowell Bruni and White Church, those teachers, I was up there a lot. You know, even when my kids wasn't, you know, acting up, I was going up there just to check, you know, and just to show them, hey, I'll be up here watching. And I also kind of volunteered here and there in recess to just play with the kids and help out. And they said that they don't get hardly any parents
Every time.
at all. They got kids that be there sick, you know, I mean, really getting other kids sick. And they said that literally they hardly get any parents to come up and be a part and even monitor their kid or come and help out with anything up there. And I believe that's a part of what's lacking in, you know, in the Wyandotte County community, in our urban communities, you know, is parents being more involved at the school and at the meeting.
Agreed. So I'll let you go after my comment, but guess who was at the meeting? Not us. Not us. We were not there. And the ones that were there, they were talking about things that had to do with the city. They were upset. I get it. Taxes is going up and we don't have anything to show for it. But we got to put forth the effort and get engaged in the meetings, not just a board meeting at the school or all the meetings. If we want our community to look like theirs, this is where it starts. This is where it starts, to get involved and then educate ourselves about the bond. Educate ourselves on the data that how students are performing in these new schools.
The money that we need to vote on to allocate or not, like you said, like Brother David said, depends on the participation of the community. Mm-hmm. And they can allocate the money, they can say yes to that money, but see, if we don't get behind what's gonna happen with that money, I think very little will happen. We've got new schools. Why don't we have the parks? Why didn't they allocate for the parks when they did the schools? And I guess Sumner High School is an old school, but it is a landmark, you know. And so I don't see it as, cause if it's 100 years old, I don't see it as that. As long as they keep it up to standards, you know, that's a landmark and a Black history thing for us, because Black people went to Sumner before it became what it is now. And so they had events, and when my children were coming up, they would have events like in the summer. They would have programs where they're supposed to teach and help them with their math and whatever they had over the summer. They would come there, and the last thing they were doing was doing teaching. They would hire youth, and that was good, but they weren't committed to a curriculum, and so they ended up what they needed they weren't getting, and that's because we weren't there in mass to say, you know, we want our children to learn just like they want their children to learn, and give them a curriculum and give them teachers who really want them to grow. So I would say, as far as this money, find out exactly how it's going to be spent, because it could be, we could say yes and it passed, and we not get any of the things that we're talking about because it's happened before. And I don't see that why it wouldn't happen again.
So they talked about that. The bond is only for the schools, the upkeep of the schools, the building of the new schools, and facilitating certain upgrades of the schools. That's all the bond is for. It's not for UG. UG is the one that keep up the city parks and the county lakes and all that. And so if we want things to be done in the city, in the Wyandotte County, we gotta go talk to UG. UG takes a lot of our money. Check on your BPU bill. That BPU bill is high because UG is taking all that money. It's called the pilot. Did you have a question over there?
Much as a question, but one of the things that Sister Butler was pointing out, though, and I don't know if she meant to this degree, but I remember when my nieces were here, there was freedom schools. And even though it wasn't necessarily a curriculum, I can go to my nieces right now, they're in their 20s, and they can still recite the song from Freedom School. They can still recite some of the education that they got from Freedom School. And now we don't have them in our community anymore. We kind of lost it. And I understand what you're saying is about the building and the upkeep and the lighting, but stuff like that, we initiated. It didn't come from the government. It was the churches, it was the people in the community. And I think somehow we done lost that passion to take and make sure our kids have the education they need.
And that brings me back to my point. It is us. Because that wasn't the school system, that was us. Why don't we still have Freedom School? Because it was us. She mentioned that we want our kids to do good. Well, the numbers is showing that we don't. The participation numbers, the data, the information from the teachers is showing that we don't want our kids to do good. We don't want our kids to succeed because that's what they're going off, the data. They're going strictly off the data. It started back in 2005 when they started getting the bond money, or she went as far back as 2005. And from 2005 to now, the money has slacked off. And why? Because they are saying that we don't care. We don't come to the meetings as shown. At the meetings, it was not many of us there. It was not. She mentioned it. Mm-hmm.
She said you can stand up and say whatever you want to say. And even though it's my daughter's birthday, I plan on going to this meeting. It's more important than the birthday. So Sister Trina announced it.
Miss Butler back there, and then Kevin.
The mayor announced it on yesterday, and just said, make sure you come, whatever is going on in the community you want to address, come to the meeting on Thursday and be prepared to speak on whatever the situations are, what we need, what we don't have, and things that should have taken place. They're working on the streets. They made trenches that if you were on the wrong side of the street, you had to park on the opposite. And then when I came home, they had a trench I couldn't get over. There was nobody there to help me. They were there, but they didn't help. So I fell that day.
Oh, wow.
I fell, and they saw me fall. And so the one guy asked me, could my groceries went tumbling out of my hand, and so he asked, could he carry my box, but not if, And so they should have put me out some kind of way to get back and forth from that point, but they did not. So there's a disregard for the people in these communities, because I think they wouldn't have had to ask if you were in another community. I don't believe.
Correct.
Well, sister, family, we got to invest in our young people. That's our funeral, so it should be yes. But I'm a bus model now, and I ask kids stuff. They don't know nothing at these schools. I'm like, what are you guys learning? They really don't know nothing. Stuff I knew as a kid, they don't know anything. And I'm like, where's the teaching going? So I just really feel we have to get involved. You can make it different if you started this. Don't never think you can't do nothing, because you can. Start where you at right now. But people more aware, get people involved, because our kids are our tomorrow. So our youth was very inspiring to me.
And so you talk about they don't know nothing. Before you send your kids to school, they already should know a lot of stuff. And so it is. Did you have a comment?
Well, I've just been learning from some of these videos I've been seeing on Instagram about talking to kids. You can't just be asking them wide open questions. You got to be asking who did you sit by at school for lunch, and then that opens them up to if you want to ask them things. I mean, ask them stuff like that to get them. And I don't think they teach who's on the dollar bill in the school. I don't think they teach that at school. They don't teach. Yeah, but Sister Ira said that's some of the stuff we should be teaching at home. We, like she said, it's us.
It's
Because
us.
we not doing it. We can't point to them because when the kids come home, we still have opportunity, which I've been trying to teach my daughter. She can't just let the kids come home and just be on the iPads and she trying to relax. And I understand she need to relax too, but they need to be guided. We're supposed to raise them up in the way they should go.
That's
and,
right.
And
There you
we
go.
got to put in effort. And effort takes time. I don't think some people don't think about that when they're having kids, but that takes time. I'm sorry, did I say
That's
that?
another topic.
But it takes time, and we got to make sure we put in the effort. Now, but believe me, I've been guilty before too, but I'm trying to teach my daughter the right way since she's got little kids so that she can, raise them up in the way they should go. Because they are our future and they need us.
Amen.
Good morning. What about PTA? Oh, I know it's old school, okay, but I'm gonna tell you. Parents, teachers, they become accountable for each other. And I think that's a missing point that we haven't made.
Okay. Was it one over here and then I? Okay.
Okay, I was going to say that as a parent, when your kids come home and they tell you things, some parents take it lightly. But with me, when my kids would come home and tell me something, I literally went up to the school, had a conversation with the principal to let him know. If a teacher has a problem with my child, don't just switch her to a different class instead of talking to the parents because there's nothing wrong with her. She just doesn't she doesn't talk a lot. So don't switch her to another class thinking she has some issues. And I told him, I said, if y'all have ever have a problem with any of my kids, don't just discipline them without contacting us. And so I laid that down from the beginning. And so I never had any other problems. And then another thing, I been in Wyandotte County all my life, but I've never seen where we don't have a park that has a water park and little things that you can take the kids to play and have fun. You have to go to Johnson County, go up north, and it's sad that we don't have anything in Wyandotte County to take our kids to. So then they're wondering why there's a lot of people that is moving out of Wyandotte County.
That's why.
Because we don't have anything for our kids.
And we talked about that earlier. Once we all move, it's called urban renewal. Yeah. Yeah. It's called urban renewal.
Yeah.
We talked about it, and it's happening right now, and so I think that
I wanted to kind of add to what I don't since Tanya was saying. She has a valid point because when I went up to Devontae's school, I was telling y'all about some of the issues I was having with him. I actually went up there and I talked to him. I said, hey, I want to come and sit in his class just to see how he teaches, just to see how the other students are acting, And when I got there, there was no consistency. And the students were, because he got in trouble for blurting out a lot. Well, it was like 5 students that were blurting out all the time. But I was always getting something about Devontae blurting out. And I realized there was a kid that Devontae wanted to, he was feeding off of him. So I said, hey, I want him out of this class. I was like, just for the success of that kid and Devontae, I want these boys to succeed both. So since I see they're feeding off each other, I want to move him to a different class. And he hasn't, it's almost going on a month. Haven't had a problem since. I will say, because you know how the teachers in certain grades, each teacher, they actually, they teach a specific subject. So they'll have like four classes, a special, and then social studies, science, and math, where certain teachers, they stick to that. And when he gets back to that teacher, he always gets the lowest, point for the day. And I realized that he already has it out for Devontae and certain kids, so every other class he's doing well in, the highest point he can get is a 6. He gets a 6 in every last one, but he'll get like a 2 with that teacher. And I talked to the principal. I said, I know the inconsistency in that class. Majority of the students just blurt out. None of them raise their hand to get up and throw paper. Another kid in the back, he gets up and goes and plays with one of the kids that like to blurt out, And that's something that we as parents, especially with having those kind of issues, I believe that's something that we all have to do as parents is go see what the teachers are doing. What's going on in this classroom, especially if we're having issues with behavior possibly. Sit in that class. I sat in the back where couldn't nobody see me, and I just watched. And that's what I observed. And I shared that with the principal. And again, haven't had a problem since.
You know where else it happens? It happens at church. It happens at church. It happens at church, so I know it's going on at school. And the Bible says, train up a child in the way that he should go. So that training starts at home, what we talked about. That training starts at home. Manners, they should know manners before they go to school. Respect, they should know respect before they go to school. 2 main things that will break or make a child. Because that teacher is going to treat them based on those 2 things. How can I get to teach this child if they don't have good manners and they don't have respect? Sister Lakeitha. Then we got Miss Butler.
I was listening to the comments, and one thing I'd like to say is you guys are talking about the schools in Wyandotte County and the buildings and the old buildings, and it was stated that, the buildings probably need to be updated. But we need teachers that care about the children. Because my daughter is in Shawnee Mission High School, in Shawnee Mission School District. And for the last, since COVID, I think they're teaching themselves. And she could go to sleep in class and they just give you a test and expect you to pass it. So I'm like, you're passing a class and they're not teaching. What really would be going on if they were teaching? And so I think we need to look at it as a whole, as the body of Christ, and going into the church being the foundation for our education, because we're in a society itself. It's a common trend I'm seeing in other parents in other districts. It's a common trend that is a setup for our children to be ignorant.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And we have to decide as a body of Christ what we're going to do about it. Because we can go to the school district and the school board. That's the world system. It has a system that it's already set up as. But if we have the power to change what goes on in the house of God.
Amen.
And so I know that our bishop is seeking, a Christian education. And so that's where we need to put our prayer and our focus. And yes, training does have to happen at home. And I can tell you that the lack of respect is not, of parents teaching it, even to the young people in the community, because we grew up and we just knew not to say a cuss word in front of an adult. And we go to a football game and literally my husband had to turn around and say, no, like, stop it. Because they didn't care that we were there.
No, little bitty kids, they just cuss
And
in front of
so
adults.
the children are raising themselves at home. And so this is enlightening me in a path that I have to get more involved, because I was involved with my other two children. And but it's definitely, we're in a different day and a different time. But as believers, we have to not lower the standard for our children and the expectation. Because my children are respectful and respect adults, but they're being told by adults, don't call me Mr. and Mrs. and ma'am, because their teachers are 23, 24 years old. Or we have a 70-year-old neighbor that says, no, that makes me feel old. So we have to also tell our children, well, I tell my children, and I tell adults that tell me that, my children are not allowed to go against that training. I'm sorry how it makes you feel, but they are not allowed to go against that training. You are Miss So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so in respect of your eldership of them, no matter how it make you feel. You are elder and maybe you don't want to act like it, but that is, I mean, they're not. I'm not going to make them go against what I taught them.
Right. And you talked about recruiting, getting the teachers need to teach. But the one thing that they pointed out in this board meeting, to get those good teachers, you got to have a school that's performing at least at some type of standard in order to recruit those great teachers. We do have good teachers in our school district. I'm not saying that we don't. We do have good teachers in our school district. But in order for us to press the overload of great teachers and really teaching them, we do have to have our schools up to par. 100-year-old school where the lighting is so dim you can't see is unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Piggyback off what she said when she said kids are raising themselves. We got these parents that want to be kids' friends and everything. Once you open up that door, they don't have no respect for you because they look at you like, well, I'm on the same level as you and everything. And so that's what's wrong with this society now. Like, we look at them as, we treat them like they are friends and everything, and we don't know how to be a parent because you got kids that's disrespecting, cussing in front and everything, and like, what, my mom ain't gonna do nothing, so. So they dressing like they hoochie mama or like out on the street and everything, like, it's the point like how we raise our kids.
Right.
So like you said, we gotta do better.
We got to do better. Because as I said, some of this stuff, like he was talking about the kids acting up in class and what they was doing, it go on in the church class right up there. It goes on. It goes on. So I do know that is what you doing here is what you doing at school. So we got to start it at home. That's not nothing for the teachers. That's for us as parents, us as being a community, us as church. This is where they can learn, here at church. If they're not getting the learning at home, then we can teach them at church. And then when somebody say something to them, don't go off. Because that's what I mean about the disrespect and the manners. Teachers don't want to be bothered because then the mama come up there talking about, No, I'm not going to deal with that. So we got to have some degree of respect for each other and our own children. We send our children out into this society. I wish we had a school here. But we may be working on it. God is going to bless us. But up until now, right for this very moment, we got to do better. We got to show up for them.
Respect. Right. Our children, a lot of them are children raising children. And I tell the example of years ago when a woman, a girl, had her baby, or he might have been a year and a half too, and she had, I don't know if she had cussed him out or yelled at him or hit him or whatever, and he started crying, and she told him to shut up, be a man. I was like, well, he just started walking, looked like to me. Like, really? Be a man. So she don't know what a man is. And so when we have that mentality, teaching younger kids and they're growing up, they can't be anything different than what they see, and then how they are allowed to act in the homes, and these electronics just further destroy, what's going on in our kids' minds. I knew the times tables or something. If they don't have it on a piece of paper, if they don't have it in a calculator, or a telephone, they don't know. Yeah, and I tell people about, we had to learn stuff, like we didn't have telephones. If you have a phone number, you want me to know your phone number, you tell it to me, boom, I got it. I tell it to me. And that's how I kept track of other people and other things. We just learned what we were supposed to learn. And nowadays, you don't have to learn anything. If you can't, they open up the phone, and if it ain't in there, it ain't gonna get done. And all they're doing is just copying. So what we need is prayer. What we need is prayer, and we need to hopefully bring them to the church. But you're not getting many of them in the churches. So you're getting a few who might have to respect the teacher. We used to respect. There used to be Mr., Miss, ma'am, sir. Ain't none of that. You get that same 2-year-old gonna call you by whatever name he want to, cuss you out. I saw a video where he might have been 3 or 4. He was cussing the police officer out on the curb in front of his house. Where was his mama? And if he knew to do that, what was he being taught? Mm-hmm. What character were they trying to build in him? One to hate, one of, be a man, and even when you don't know what that is. So we have work to do.
We have work to do. And it talks about
Thursday, we have work to do.
In Titus 2, how the women are to teach the younger women. And we don't want to put it all on the women. Us as a church community, we say that women, and yes, we do. But as a church community, we are to teach our younger people, or sometimes our older people. We have to teach them. Or else, why don't we do the timetables anymore? When I was coming up in, when I was younger, couple back there. When I was younger, we had to know the Beatitudes, the 10 Commandments. When I went to YPWW, we had to know all the books of the Bible. And I could recite them like, shoop, shoop, shoop. We will win every week. Why don't we teach our kids? Nobody said we couldn't. Why don't we do it? That's on us as a community. It is on us. You want your kids to write in cursive? You're going to have to teach them, because they don't teach it anymore. Teach it to them. There is nothing that say that they can't learn how to write in cursive. There is nothing that says that. You must teach your children what you want them to know. Back in the day, before we went to kindergarten, we knew so much before we went to kindergarten. When we went to kindergarten, we was ready to learn 1st and 2nd grade. I remember my brother got moved up because we got moved up because we already knew that stuff, because we learned it at home. When we come home from school, then my great-grandmother, she made sure, well, what are you learning? I might don't know it all, but I'm going to get somebody over here that can help you. We as the church, we have to do our part to help our community. I talked about that at the beginning of the hour. 50 years ago, some of the 2 newest schools was 50 years ago in our county. the population looked at different. What they were voting on 50 years ago, they thought that was going to help their community. Did they know the data? Well, now they do. So in 50 years, guess what? They not really building these schools. So that the bond on the schools is going to pass because they ain't building it for us. So we have to think off of our nose. We have to think way in the future. You're saying no to these schools getting built. They're going to get built anyway. They're not going to include you because they don't expect for you to be here. They don't expect for you to be here. Who had a question? Nobody. It's your turn. Oh.
I remember when I was going to an all-black school and they bust us. I believe a lot of our grades dropped because them teachers didn't care about us. They just passed us. Mm-hmm. When I was going to Grant, I was supposed to go to Northeast. The year I was supposed to go to Northeast, it closed.
Yeah.
And I did the Gateway, and I went all the way to Rosedale and Harmon. And some of my friends in the project, they went to Irish High, just different schools. But when we was going to school there to have a community, I never understood that. How we had to be busted. But when I went to Rosedale, we had teachers that couldn't teach, and they didn't care about us.
All right, and they don't really care now. It's still the same way. Because I'm telling you, in 50 more years, they don't plan to see me and you in that community, in those schools. And they're going to be building those schools regardless of what we say, because we're not showing up anyway. We wasn't at the meeting. It was them who was at the meeting, and they wanted to pass because why? Even some of the teachers who said, well, I live in this community, and I teach at these schools, and I want this. You know why? Because in 50 years, what the landscape of our community is going to look like, it's going to look like them, and they're going to make sure that they get those schools. They even talked about the parks and the pools. They're saying, well, we don't have a pool. I'm trying to hurry up real quick. We don't have a pool in our community, and they want to get the new pools in the community, and they want to put it under the school districts. Yeah, they'll put it under the school district, and that way, yous won't be participating in that pool. So that was the one thing I didn't like, but I do realize they're not thinking right now. They're thinking way in the future, okay? So we got to be on it. We got to be about it.
Yes, I was wanting to pick back off what Ms. Levant was saying about the ma'am. My daughter Ezra in Houston, Texas, she got in trouble for calling the teacher ma'am. And the teacher always pushed her around and everything. And my daughter Celeste, she went up to the school and asked her why my daughter coming home crying. And she said, well, Ezra is very disrespectful. She called me ma'am. I said, what? I never heard such a thing. This girl is 25 years old. And Celeste was kind of mad about that.
So it's all about in our society to be a young girl and to stay a young girl. But in reality, you're not going to stay no young girl. And if you want respect from these kids, you're going to have to make them respect you. Because if I talk to you on the same level, I can't respect you because I can think I can do what you can do. So they kind of set that up. Like, I don't have to call you ma'am or Miss Teacher. I can call you Lily and Susie. Well, guess what?